that like a super famous song? I think I've heard it.
Yeah.
You can sing.
So I'm a huge fan of that song as well. So I was really compelled to try out Arabic elements in songs, and it worked out well for my advantage.
And we're on. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Last Week Liquid podcast. Today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Sasith, better known as Iyre. Sasith is a drum and bass producer from Sri Lanka with releases on the likes of Goldfat and Focus Recordings. He is also the bass player for heavy metal band Constellation, and you can catch his latest release, Cosmic Rays, out now on all platforms. Sasith, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm going good, brother. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. First time having a Sri Lankan. Is it Sri Lankan or Sri Lankan?
It's Sri Lankan.
Sri Lankan producer on the show. So always excited to get somebody from another part of the world. I think it always brings a unique perspective to this discussion. So thanks a lot for coming on. I have to apologize first because I know you reached out to me a few months back. I think it was back in April or May. I think you had like one release at the time.
Yeah.
And you had asked me if you could come on the show. And at the time I told you that I was waiting for you to have a bit more of a back catalog so we could have more in-depth chat.
I mean, that makes sense, to be honest with you, because I obviously had one release to show. And then, of course, right now I think I have about 11 12 songs. So.
Yeah, and then like the next few months it's like Celsius, Focus, Pilot, Goldfat, UKF Upload.
So it's the perfect timing, to be honest. I think you made the right decision.
Well, I mean, now, like, honestly, you've been on fire and there's a shit ton of stuff to talk about. So I just reached out to you again and saying, let's do it now, man. So how you've been doing, man? How are you taking all this new activity around you, all of that?
It's been quite humbling to start with, because I didn't have any experience in terms of any sort of interaction with the proper drum and bass scene. I mean, I've been releasing drum and bass songs before, but then again, they were released on labels that weren't as connected to the real drum and bass scene in the UK and Europe. So it has been quite humbling and quite overwhelming at certain times as well, because none of this was imaginable for me 1 year back. So when everybody started noticing my music and when everything started snowballing, sometimes it was too much, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah.
But I have my sources to talk to, my friends, especially speaking in terms of guys like Grant from Goldfat and Winslow, Digital Native, all the Fat Fam guys. Perspective. So I've been talking to most of these guys so that I can keep focused on making proper music instead of being lost in all the attention. So yeah.
Tell me a bit more about how it felt a bit like too much. Like, that got me curious.
I mean, my first ever release was on UKF, so so that was way too much. I mean, it was like, here you go. and I couldn't take it, so I was a little bit starstruck at the moment, because there was a few of my inspirations that got in touch with me as well, and I think Scientific played one of my tunes on BBC Radio 1 as well, so it was very overwhelming, but for my advantage I have my support system with Goldfat. So we have kind of like a family oriented workspace for all of us inside Goldfat. So we feed off each other in terms of ideas, and we speak to each other whenever we can. We have these huge Zoom calls with all the artists getting together, talking about the history of the genre. So it's like university for me as well at the end of the day, because I don't know any of this stuff. I'm an outsider, I consider myself really lucky in that sense, because I get to learn every day about the genre, about the history of the genre, about the artists, about certain artists that put the genre in the map on the world arena. So it's been really humbling for me in terms of the experience so far.
Yeah. I definitely want to talk about Goldfat a bit more later on, because the family aspect of Goldfat Records is something that comes up a few times, and you have the hashtag FatFam, and
Yeah,
it seems
exactly.
whenever somebody puts out something on Goldfat, there's all the other artists that start promoting it as well, and
Yeah,
you don't see that a lot with other labels as much.
yeah.
So I want to get into that later on, but let's take a step back maybe, and obviously first person from Sri Lanka I have on the show. Tell me a bit about like how are things in Sri Lanka now? What does it look like? I'm very ignorant about Sri Lanka, so tell me a bit about the country and all that.
So in terms of COVID, our numbers are a little bit bad as of now, but our vaccination program is going on pretty strong. So I think we've completed 50% of the entire population in terms of vaccination, and they've started vaccinating people under 20 years old as well. So I think within a month or two, our country will be fully vaccinated, which I'm very happy to announce on this podcast as well. And I think the government is trying to open the country as soon as possible, because obviously our economy is dependent on tourism. A major chunk of it is dependent on tourism. There's a lot of people living off tourism-related ventures in the country. So I think our country is heading towards the right direction in terms of vaccination and getting people healthy and safe. But at the moment, we are under a lockdown. But I'm assuming that it will be lifted on 31st or 1st of next month. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I was telling you before we started recording that like I was closing down the borders for countries like in Europe or wherever. For us, it was like hard because we couldn't travel, but it's like, okay, like we'll stay home. But then we forget the other side of the story, which is countries that depend on that tourism. And then it's
Indeed,
like,
yeah.
what happens to those guys? And Sri Lanka is definitely one of those countries. I was telling you, my parents were there last year, and one of their favorite travels ever. They absolutely loved it. I think they went there as it was reopening, and there was very little tourists, and absolutely loved the country.
Yeah, that would have been the perfect situation for them as well, because there's not much of people, so they have all the locations to themselves. So a pandemic would have been the best time period to travel around, to be honest.
Is it would there be like an issue like before COVID of an issue of over tourism in Sri Lanka, or is it...
we had a situation like that as well. I think we have an income around 7 billion per year from tourism. So there's a lot of tourists coming into the country, almost around 2 to 3 million tourists per year. So, and our country is obviously small as well, and there are certain locations that are attracted by a lot of tourists. And in that sense, there's a lot of pollution going on. So it would have been this time that the nature healed itself due to non-commercial activity. So in that sense, it's a blessing in disguise. I think it was the same for islands like Bali, Indonesia as well. So yeah,
it's kind of an opportunity to reset.
Exactly.
No, for sure. So okay, let's dive back into a bit of your story, because obviously drum and bass isn't the most popular genre in Sri Lanka, to say the least.
Yes.
And as I mentioned, you play bass. You're a heavy metal guy. You had another alias before Iyre. So tell me a bit about your introduction to music in general before electronic music.
I think I was involved with music since my small days, since I was a kid. I started learning keyboards, and I started learning Western music theory when I was in grade 2. I think by that time my father was working outside Sri Lanka, and then when he came back, he got me a keyboard. And I started playing little tunes on keyboards while changing the chords with one hand, one single key, and I think he understood that I had potential to start learning music. So he straight away diverted me to Western music education. He introduced me to one of the most sought after teachers in Sri Lanka, Auntie Shama. So that was my first experience in terms of learning Western music, and I think I've been one of her older students. Also, I think I've been with her for almost 10 years. I finished up to grade 8 in terms of keyboards, and then up to grade 5 in terms of theory. I wasn't that theoretical, to be honest. I was more of a pick and play kind of a musician, and I had muscle memory and all of those skills that I required. So basically, I was pretty bad at sight reading. I mean, I wouldn't call myself really bad, but I wasn't good either. So I was okay. And so I started picking up all the skills that required me to be a musician through Auntie Shama. And later on, I think I managed to score a few awards as well from the tests and exams that were available for Western music. We had London College exams and guide hall exams in Sri Lanka as well. So they flew over an examiner to Sri Lanka, and then we had to do the exam. So that's kind of how it would go about. And
was that a stressful stressful experience doing this?
Yeah, it was a stressful experience because I was little. I was a schoolboy back then. And then obviously the language barrier was there as well. I mean, my English wasn't used to be that great when I was in school. So so there was that as well. And but it worked out all fine, and it gave me the experience to work with a foreign examiner for that matter. And I think it played a huge role in terms of building confidence inside me as well. So but in terms of my school experience, I was always involved with music. I played in the Western band in my school. I led the band for almost 3 years. I was in the percussion section. I used to play clarinet, and then I switched to percussion because I love drums. I love playing drums, and I think the clarinet didn't appeal to me as much as the drums did. I always used to hang out with the drummers.
Especially as a teenager, it's maybe not
exactly. It didn't look cool to play the clarinet, so I switched to drums, and I was a part of the drum segment of the band, and later led the band. And in terms of our school is very musical, I would say, very artistic. There's a lot of culture. It's a Methodist school primarily, but then again, there's people from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of races and religion. It's a very harmonious place. I still have pretty close friends from all the other religions and ethnicities, which made me who I am as a person as well, because I was always involved with other cultures. So in terms of musicality, my school had to play a major role, because obviously there were people who were from traditional singer backgrounds, and then there were people who were exposed to the Western music. So I got exposed to electronic music in school. Obviously, being from a acoustic background, I didn't enjoy electronic music as much as I do right now. But there was a friend of mine called Danish. He's in the UK, by the way. He's working there. So so he introduced me to so obviously, I don't know if you're familiar with a band called Korn. It's a new metal band.
New metal legends,
So Korn released a collaboration EP with a set of electronic producers.
I think they had that tune with Skrillex, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I remember.
Skrillex was there, Noisia was there,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
12th Planet,
Completely forgot
most
about
of the
that one. Yeah,
dubstep guys. Feed Me was there,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kill the Noise was there.
Was
So
it like Path to Totality or something? What's the name of
Path of
that?
Totality.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I remember that
So
one.
the
Yeah.
album was Path of Totality, and so he introduced me to the song called Get Up.
Yeah.
I think incidentally someone had made a fan video for a movie by using this song as well. So I saw this video and I listened to the song, and something happened, something clicked somewhere, and I kind of realized that metal music could be fused seamlessly with electronic music as well. So that kind of paved my gateway into electronic music. And then obviously I started listening to more and more electronic music. I obviously through the lines of these artists that were in the album. I think I started listening to Skrillex, later on to 12th Planet, Feed Me, Noisia. I wasn't as much as intrigued by Noisia, to be honest. I don't know why.
Same.
I may have been an idiot back then, but Skrillex appealed to me a lot. So I went ahead and did a little bit of research. I was exposed to his music, and then I was intrigued to a certain extent that I wanted to be like him, to make dubstep. So that was kind of like my gateway into electronic music. And then I started researching about making music. I was exposed to FL Studio before. I mean, when my father went abroad and when he came back, he had a CD with a bunch of softwares. And then there was FL Studio 3 on it.
FL Studio 3?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I used to play around FL Studio 3, make small tunes on FL Studio 3. I mean, I didn't have a proper education in terms of how to do it, but I used to make songs on one pattern on a continuous basis. But that's how I started. So. So then, of course, I started digging more into production techniques, and started researching on YouTube, and started making dubstep. So that's kind of how I got into electronic music in the first place.
Yeah, dude, I completely forgot about that album, that Korn album. I was never like really a Korn fan. I discovered metal a bit later, and so I was listening to more contemporary bands like Parkway Drive, or like my idols, and more that modern metalcore, Bring Me the Horizon, that whole style of metal. But tell me a bit. I think you're more like a prog metal, progressive metal kind of guy.
Yeah, right now I think my taste in terms of metal has obviously evolved as well, because for me my gateway bands to metal was obviously Linkin Park, which used to be really huge back in the day. When albums like Meteora were released. So I think Meteora was one of the key albums that really put me into a state of self-realization in terms of how I want to pursue myself as a musician. I don't know. So at the same time, obviously, I had friends in school who were trying out new things as well. So one day, one of the guys showed me a track called "Laid to Rest" by a band called Lamb of God. So that was kind of like the introduction for me towards the heavier side of metal music. I was a little bit scared when I first heard the song, because it's a really brutal song.
It's rough, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Obviously, Randy Blythe being Randy, his voice is amazing, I feel. And all the growls and the extreme drumming and all these guitar riffs were too much to handle at first. But then I started sinking into it, and then I got exposed to bands like System of a Down. later on, I think I started listening to the entire catalog of Lamb of God. I was a huge Lamb of God fan back then. I think I still am. And then all these gateway bands led me into progressive metal, which is kind of like I feel as if it's the most expressive subgenre of metal right now because it's progressive. It keeps changing, and there's freedom for artists to work within that progressive tag. So there's a lot of niche genres like progressive death metal, technical death metal, and then the whole gent scene, which kind of has evolved into what metal is right now. So I think in terms of my musicality with regards to metal, I think I'm on the progressive death or technical death niche genre. But we have a bit of gent genres going, gent touch in our music as well. But in terms of the bands that I listen to right now, I think I'm a huge Black Crown Initiate fan.
Black Crown?
And Initiate. So I think they're from the US.
Okay, I haven't heard of them.
I listen to bands like Behemoth, and then
that's pretty dark
Periphery,
stuff.
which I'm wearing right now.
Yeah, they're like probably the legends of prog metal. Yeah.
And Tesseract is another huge band that I love from UK. I think Tesseract is probably the biggest influence on me as a band, because if you listen to my music, I have these ambient elements going on in the background, merged with the mid basses and the sub elements on the drum and bass song. So all these influences are basically from Tesseract, because I think Tesseract is a milestone band in the prog scene. They completely reinvented how this niche genre gent was perceived as, because people used to make fun of gent, and they didn't consider gent to be as an awakening force inside the progressive metal subgenre. But right now, I think Tesseract broke that perception completely, because they sound really amazing, and I'm such a huge fan that I had to fly to India to see them live.
Cool.
So yeah, and it was a life-changing experience, because those guys are real professionals and they use the technology to its optimum. And I saw personally how they perform as a band, and that was a really amazing experience that I would love to relive when the pandemic is over. So that is kind of how where I am in terms of listening to metal.
Yeah, it's true. I never thought about it, but it's true that you can draw a lot of parallels between the like modern metalcore and prog metal and drum and bass in terms of the atmospheres. And if you listen to like Architects is another one of my all-time favorite bands.
They have a super band.
They have a ton of like atmospherics and synths and
the tremolo guitars.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff, and I've actually like sampled like intros of Architects in my own tracks, just turned them into pads and stuff. But dude, I've seen Parkway like I don't know how many times, and I was doing a live stream on Twitch the other day, and somebody was asking me, "What's your favorite memory of a live show?" And I said, they asked me, "What was your favorite festival you went to?" And I said Grasspop, which is a metal festival in Belgium. And yeah, for me, there's obviously I love drum and bass, and I'm like devoting all of my free time now to drum and bass. But there's something about metal, heavy metal, that will always appeal to me. The energy and the emotion. How would you like explain your love of metal?
I think if you look at my music library, 90% of it is metal. So metal is kind of like what I listen to quite often. I don't get to listen to drum and bass as quite often as I would love to, but I think the only moment that I listen to more drum and bass would be when I make guest mixes and when I download promos from other labels, and so those are kind of like the instances that I listen to drum and bass as often as I would love to. But other than that, I think I'm mostly exposed to metal and a bit of ambient genres like all these acid kind of genres. I love listening to techno as well. I'm not very specific about what whom I'm going to listen to, but I love listening to techno as well. So so those kind of genres are what I most often listen to as well. But in terms of drum and bass, it's not much, to be honest. But I would like to change that in the future. But then again, in terms of my creativity, I feel as if there's a lot to draw from other genres into drum and bass, because obviously drum and bass is a progressive genre as well. There's freedom to work inside as producers, because obviously it's a sample based genre, and people have the freedom to basically draw inspiration from whatever genre that they require. So that's kind of like the ideology I have in terms of being a drum and bass producer, just to see how I can merge elements from other genres, or maybe other cultures as well, because I'm obviously from South Asia, so there's a lot of cultural elements in our region. So I'm trying to see how I can merge those elements into drum and bass as well.
Yeah, definitely, and that's something you did greatly on your single on Goldfat, which I want to talk about afterwards. Just sticking on metal for just one more second before we move to drum and bass. Tell me a bit.
Talk about metal as long as we want.
Dude, if I could, I'd probably do another podcast with just be heavy metal bands.
Exactly.
But tell me a bit about your band, where I think you play bass, but you also produce. For the band. Tell me a bit about that band, how it came together.
So the band is called Constellation. We are a progressive death metal band from Sri Lanka. The band was formed in 2014, and there were a bunch of friends that got together and formed the band as usual. And then we have a huge competition in Sri Lanka called TNL on stage, and Constellation won it. So then in 2016 I met them in I think it was an interview for a TV channel. So I met these guys, and I interacted with them, realized how cool they were. So we hung out together, and then I started making a bit of metal as well. So there was a song that I wrote with the vocalist of Constellation, Ishant. Fall into Eternity is the name of that song. So we finished that song, and the band were quite intrigued by that song, the style of production, and then they asked me if I want to join Constellation full time. So I said yes, which was an amazing opportunity for me as a producer as well. So I've been working with Constellation since 2016, and I wasn't playing bass back then. I was kind of like the keyboardist and the sampler for the band, because obviously our music has a lot of keyboards and a lot of ambient elements and samples being connected to the music. So that's what I did at first, and then our bassist had to move to Netherlands to pursue his higher education. So in that case, we didn't have anybody to play bass, so I took the bass duties. So that's how I became the bassist. I think I've been playing bass for the band since 2018. Our bassist's name was Aseka, so he moved to Netherlands, and then I got his place. So that's kind of how I started playing bass for the band.
Did you play bass before, or did you kind of learn it to be able to?
That was actually the first time that I played bass. But I can play guitar. So it's just basically translating that knowledge into bass. But I've been obsessed with bassists for a long time, because I feel as if the modern metal sound is driven by the bass. There's so much emphasis on the tone of bass right now than it has ever been before. I think before the bass was perceived as an instrument that basically sits in the mix.
Just filling in.
Exactly. but right now it's the bass and the drums that drive the song.
Yeah.
So I feel as if the bassist is an unsung hero in a band. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I was always intrigued. I'm a huge fan of Amos Prem Williams.
Yeah.
So he's the bassist of Tesseract, and I think he's one of the most flamboyant bassists I've ever seen. I think if you go to YouTube and check out their live performance, he's really flamboyant, and people call him Elrond of bass, Lord Elrond from Lord of the Rings, because he has this long hair and then he doesn't have a beard, but he's like an elf basically playing the bass, and he's going with all these movements and very fluid in terms of live performance. So I was really intrigued by his bass sound as well, and obviously from Periphery, Adam Nolly Getgood, who's also the mixing engineer for Periphery. So those guys kind of inspired me to pursue bass as well. And I've been loving my experience ever since. I think I played about 2-3 gigs with the band as well. So it was amazing to play bass, because when you're on stage and when you play the bass, you feel it. You feel it under your feet, or the low end of the band, and you feel as if you're the driving force of the band when all the low end is felt on stage. So it's been pretty amazing to be the bassist of the band. But so that's kind of my experience in terms of playing bass. And I have this pedal called the Dark Glass Alpha Omega, which is originally owned by Aseka, but when he moved to Netherlands, he sold it to me. So now I have one of the Dark Glass pedals as well. So it's pretty crazy when you hear the sound on stage. So
it's true, man. Like what you're saying about like the tone of the bass and driving, and like if you think back to Korn, like the bass was fundamental to their sound.
Yeah, exactly.
If you look at other bands, when I think about like a bass tone, I think about Tool, for example. Like their bass tones are like insane. And to a lesser extent in more modern metal, like Northlane. I don't know if you know those guys.
Yes,
like
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, like their bass sounds are like, it's always a driving force in their tracks. And,
I think they use Dark Glass as well.
Okay.
I think Dark Glass is the secret, to be honest. Dark Glass changed the perception of tone in bass completely with the innovative techniques, and I think they've expanded into software areas as well. They have DSP plugins with Neural, and then they introduced a profiler called. Let me recall the name of the profiler. It doesn't come to my mind right now, but they introduced an electronic profiler, just like a Kemper or an XFX. So they've been completely changing the horizon in terms of the future of bass for metal music and all the other genres. So I think guys like Adam Nolly Getgood, who started endorsing Dark Glass in the first place. So those guys completely changed how bass was perceived in metal music and all the other genres. So it has been a huge influence for me as an artist as well.
So I'm really curious, like, because obviously you're a huge metal fan, I can hear that, and you're a instrument player first and a band player. What kind of made you shift to like your focus being on electronic music and being a solo producer now? Why not stick with like metal and a band and focus all your time and energy there? What made you kind of focus more on?
So I created my electronic music alias in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. So I was always an electronic musician. I was making dubstep, and later on I was introduced to drum and bass in 2016. But then again, my roots were coming from metal music, so I was attached to metal music. Obviously, being from that background, but at the same time, I was introduced to electronic music. So, as and when time progressed, the word genre was non-existent in my production. I didn't see music as a genre. I just felt that as if there were specific tastes that were around for us to pursue. I've even made genres like trance. I've even made genres like hardstyle, so to speak. So the word genre was pretty much non-existent. I had freedom to switch on and off between genres. I produce with a lot of rappers as well. I produce a lot of hip hop music in the local scene. That's what I kind of do right now with my previous alias. So I produce a lot for hip hop artists, all the underground hip hop crews in Sri Lanka. I work with them and I collaborate with them with my other alias whenever I have time. But right now, my most prominent project would be Iyre. But then again, I'm exposed to other musical ventures as well.
Okay, so yeah, tell me a bit about then Iyre, because Iyre started. I think you launched it like earlier this year or maybe late last year. So why the new alias? What was your mindset behind starting that new alias?
So if you recall, my previous alias was called iClown, which is not the correct name to go ahead in the first place. So I think it was more of a dubstep kind of a name, because that name would have been resonated in a dubstep scenario. But obviously, I switched the genres from dubstep to drum and bass. So I had to decide. I had to take the call to either pursue with the current alias I have or to create something new and start fresh. It was a calculated risk, but obviously I was a part of. I am still a part of DnB Academy as well. You know, our main man Andre Human Nature. So he was very instrumental in terms of. Providing me with instincts to go ahead with a new name instead of pursuing with iClown, because obviously he has so much experience behind him. He has been making drum and bass for almost 2 decades now. So he has been in the scene. He has seen things before me. So I took his idea as well. But it was a difficult decision to make, to be honest with you, because I had a fan base with iClown, obviously with a verified page on Facebook and all that. So it was a difficult decision in my end to make, because I had to start from scratch. I didn't know anybody in the scene. I didn't know any of the labels. I didn't have friends except for you guys from DnB Academy. So it was a huge risk, but at the end of the day, it paid off.
Yeah, definitely. Probably what I should have asked first, because I think you mentioned that you're one of the few or the only drum and bass producer in Sri Lanka. There might be like smaller ones, but maybe not like with official releases and stuff. But so the question I should have asked you first is like, why produce drum and bass if it's if there's like nobody around you in Sri Lanka that produces it, probably no real parties or events that you could play at. What kind of attracted you in drum and bass?
So I was introduced to drum and bass in 2016, obviously through dubstep, because I was making dubstep before, and obviously dubstep has connectivity to drum and bass as well. So I was looking for genres which sounded similar to dubstep, and then I started. I think I saw Knife Party, a few songs by Knife Party. Centipede was the first song. So that's kind of like a huge dubstep hit back in the day. So I saw Centipede and I did little. So what I do is whenever I am exposed to a new artist, I research him, because there's so much to learn from the background stories of these guys. That's one of my favorite things in the world in terms of getting introduced to new musicians.
Wikipedia and you just start reading their pages.
Yeah, I started reading about the background. So I saw the name Pendulum, that Gareth and
Rob Swire.
Obviously Rob Swire were used to be members from Pendulum, and that they disbanded in 2010. So I went and searched for Pendulum, and I think the first song that I heard was Watercolor, and again something clicked. So I was very, very attracted to the genre because it was, because obviously the production technique of Pendulum was to fuse rock music with electronic elements. So I'm from a metal background as well. So it completely resonated in terms of how the production would go like. And then obviously songs like Crush, Self to Self. I think they collaborated with In Flames for
Yeah.
that song.
That's a straight up metal song.
Straight up metal song, yeah. So songs like that got me really attached to drum and bass, even more so than dubstep did. So I immediately started researching about the genre, and I started making drum and bass songs, and it was really easy for me to make the type of songs that Pendulum made, because obviously it's being infused with the rock elements. So I just had to divert my inspirations that I gathered from metal music into drum and bass. So I did a little bit of research. I was introduced to the arm and break and all that background story in terms of sampling and all that. So I started making drum and bass ever since, and I've been going at it ever since. But I think I was secondly influenced by Neuro. I tried my hands on Neuro as well, because obviously with dubstep being my primary genre, I wanted to make it heavy in drum and bass scene as well. So I tried out Neuro in the first phase, but before that, I think I was very influenced by the Pendulum sound. I think my first ever release got featured on EDM.com.
Oh, wow.
Also. Yeah, so I think I still have that song as well online. So I was completely in love with drum and bass, and then later on, I think I made a couple of drum step songs as well, because obviously Pendulum had drum step going on, and then Knife Party was making a fortune out of drum step. So I think that was kind of how I was introduced to drum and bass. But later on, when I started working with Andre Humanice from DnB Academy, I was exposed to Liquid, and once I started making tunes, I felt as if my stronger areas in production would be to pursue in Liquid and to infuse Liquid music with deep and techie elements, because I have these influences drawn from metal and dubstep and all these genres. So I just needed to figure out how I can merge everything together and make something of my own. So that is kind of how Iyre was born.
Yeah, dude, like Pendulum, like I talked to a lot of people on this podcast who are like roughly the same age as us, give or take a few years, and anybody who's born between like 89, 90, all the way to 96 or something, Pendulum comes up like every single time. And I'm a bit similar to you, where I was more I wasn't into metal yet, but more punk rock scene, like Blink and Sum 41 and all those guys. So very much like just, straight up rock. And the first time I heard Pendulum, it was for the track Witchcraft. That was the first time I saw it on TV with the video clip for it, and I was just like, what is this? Like, this is fucking awesome. Because you can recognize like the drums and the guitars and the singing are still kind of rock influenced. And then you have those melodies on top which are full on electronic, and I'd never heard anything like that. And I just think it's interesting because going back to Skrillex as well, those types of artists get a lot of hate because Skrillex changed the entire dubstep scene, and half the planet probably hates Skrillex. And it's been the same way with Pendulum, where probably half the drum and bass scene hates Pendulum because they took it in a very commercial way, pop direction, you could say. But I think what people forget sometimes is the entire generation that they introduced the genre to. And so for me, those bands are like hugely important.
Yeah, I feel the same. I don't understand the hate behind Pendulum, because obviously Pendulum put drum and bass in the global map. To be honest with you, because I mean, I'm from Sri Lanka, so for me to be exposed to drum and bass from Sri Lanka,
Yeah.
so you can imagine how big Pendulum is
Yeah.
in terms of a band, and obviously with the way they play and Rob's vocals, I think he's a phenomenal vocalist.
Fucking
I think
legend.
people should drum and bass artists should probably try to work with him
Yeah.
and get him involved in productions, because I feel as if he's a phenomenal vocalist. And obviously they have the technology going on as well, because they were playing live around 2010, 2009, 2007, 2006. So right where when the technology was getting introduced to live elements
Yeah.
in terms of performance, because obviously bands like Linkin Park started playing with click tracks. They started using in-ear monitors. They started going wireless. They started introducing all these touch pads and scratch tables into live music. So later on, I think it was Pendulum who took it to another level with all the samplers, the guitar sampler that guitar sampler that Rob uses to play live.
Yeah, kind of a
And
MIDI.
I think I've exactly.
Yeah.
I think I've heard that they used to use mainframe computers to process the sound on stage. I think it is a correct rumor.
Okay.
Because back in the day, we didn't have processing power on computers like we used to right now. Basically, we can pack our laptop and go and do a performance right now. But back in the day, in the 2006s, 2007s, it was just the Pentium era. And I think they used to use mainframe computers to process the sound on stage, so which is amazing. And I think I saw the Glastonbury festival that they played, and and there was another festival that they played, a concert hall in UK. I can't remember the name. It's very famous.
Brixton.
Brixton
Academy,
the Brixton Academy DVD. I saw that as well. To this day, I get goosebumps watching them perform live, because it was so energetic. And there was so much energy behind that show. And to this day, I get goosebumps. So I'm obviously agreeing with you in terms of how influential Pendulum was. I don't understand the hate, but it is what it is. But then again, I'm so grateful for Pendulum.
I saw them live once in Brussels in a concert venue, like 2,000 people or something. It was for their immersion tour. And I remember like having like and I was like young, but I had like, it was one of the most like violent, in a good way, violent mosh pits I would go to like a lot of like metal concerts, but one of the most violent and energetic concerts. And I had like, I couldn't walk for a week afterwards because I was just completely wrecked. But yeah, the level of energy is something I've only experienced with them and Prodigy when I saw them back in the day. There's so much energy in those concerts.
I think Pendulum drew a lot of inspiration from Prodigy. Obviously, they work together as well. I think they to this day, I think they're close friends. So I feel as if Pendulum definitely drew some energy from Prodigy as well. I mean, Prodigy, I think compared to Pendulum, Prodigy still would knock the hat out of Pendulum in terms of the energy in a live arena.
They had a completely different vibe because they had their like Maxime and Keith Flint and like the dancing and just getting the crowd pumped and all of that. It's fucking insane, man.
But so obviously I was introduced to Pendulum in 2016, 6 years after they disbanded in the first place. So I think it's one of my dreams to see them live. I hope they at least come to India so that I can fly to India and see them live. Would be amazing to see them live. Definitely a worthy experience.
Yeah, I hope they bring back because I don't think they're doing live shows anymore at the moment. It's
I think they did a couple of tours with the live show, with the live band last year or the year before last. But since then, I think it was pretty much the DJ set. But it was happy to see Gareth and Rob playing with El Hornet
It's still
in
something,
the live
yeah.
DJ set.
Yeah.
They call themselves the Trinity, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken, the
yeah.
Pendulum Trinity.
Yeah.
So it's good to see them back on stage with Pendulum
Yeah.
instead of trying to work on Knife Party, because I don't think, I mean, it should have been Pendulum.
Yeah, all the way, yeah.
Knife Party was a distraction.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of hate at the time because it was like dubstep was obviously blowing up with Skrillex, and then Rob went and did Night Party, and it kind of looked like he was going there to grab the money, which is a fine motivation if that's what you want to do. They were doing like fire tracks, like Bonfire was like on repeat. I used to love that track, but yeah, if they could have stuck and done a few more albums with Pendulum, that would have been nice.
Yeah, because obviously with Immersion, they drew the levels to such a new level, and then suddenly
it stops. Yeah,
we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
So it would have been nice to have a couple of another Pendulum album or two, but I mean I understand as well, because they've been working together for quite some time, so they needed a distraction, because obviously now we being producers, we feel the importance of getting out of it once in a while, to take our mind off things. So this could have been the escape into the wild and doing what they like at the moment, and then coming back.
Dude, this got me really nostalgic. I think I'm gonna blast some Pendulum this afternoon in the house, and I haven't listened to that album in a long time, so I'll probably put it on. So we mentioned Goldfat earlier, and I do want to chat a bit about those guys. Tell me how you got like introduced to Goldfat. How did you hear about those guys, and why did you want to like be with those guys to start off with?
So with me creating this new alias, I wanted to see where my sound would fit, and I was doing my research in terms of where I want to send music to, and obviously Focus was one of the places, because Human Nature was instrumental in the Focus family of labels, and so we were compelled to send music to Marco anyway. But at the same time, I wanted to do my own research and see where my sound would fit the most. And I came across this guy called Winslow.
The infamous Winslow.
From US, Missouri. So I started listening to his tracks, and then I immediately noticed that it's not the traditional brand of liquid that Goldfat is pushing out. So I kind of felt as if they are open to new experiences and new styles of production inside, obviously the soulful aspects of drum and bass. So I started snooping around. I went and started listening to the back catalogs of Goldfat, and then by that time I think I had a couple of songs. The first song was called "The River," featuring one of my friends called Balamandala. So I had that song, and I sent them a demo, and on the demo drop, and I didn't hear back from them for almost 3 months. So by this time, I think I had completely given up my chances of any sorts of interaction with Goldfat, and I was trying to release the River by my own, but then I heard back from them. So I think Grant replied, and he sent me an email, and he was like, the song is really well crafted, but they feel as if it wouldn't sit on Goldfat right now, but that he would love to send this to Marisa. Obviously, we both know Marisa, our big sis, Pixies. Shouts to Marisa. So he sent the track to Marisa, and she loved it, and then she offered to put it on Headspace. I think volume 4, if I'm not mistaken. So that's kind of how I started my conversation with Goldfat. But then at the same time, I was like, I have this one more song. Would you please listen to this as well? And then Grant was like, sure, send it in. And then I sent them fragments. So then they were really happy with Fragments, and then they told me that they want to include it to Full Fat 01, which used to be which was the VA that they released in January. And then they introduced me to the label, obviously to Might Kiss and all the Fat Fam artists. They put me to the group and welcomed me. So I think they were happy with the song, and they pushed me to do a single with 2 tracks. So that's how I got into Goldfat. It was a little nerve-wracking in the initial stages, because obviously I didn't hear back from them for almost 3 months. But it has been amazing so far since Fragments happened.
And Fragments, I think, is still, from your discography, one of my favorites, because it just has a very like unique, a bit glitchy atmosphere, and the shakers are kind of it kind of stands out in the usual drum and bass liquid kind of scene. Do you
I think there's a lot of techie and deep elements into it. I think the techie elements make it a little bit more modern in terms of the sound, but at the same time it has a lot of old school sampling techniques going on as well. It's basically the same sample that is being manipulated in the various phases of the song.
So then moving on to your first single, it's one of the best artworks that I've seen in a long time in drum and bass. That artwork is just brilliant. Tell me a bit about the artwork, how it came together, but then obviously the 2 tracks, because I know both tracks have their own kind of meaning and
so the artwork, obviously, what we do is we usually gather inspiration and we talk about it with Might Kiss Johnny, because he's the guy who does the artwork for all of us. He's phenomenal. He's a one-man army. He does the artwork, he does the videography, all the teaser videos, and everything. So he's basically a one-army guy. I think he's really and a really underrated producer. Even though he's on hospital, he deserves so much attention. I feel as if he's an amazing artist and an amazing human being. So so we usually talk with him in terms of what the inspirations behind the track as well. And he asked me if I want to put something Sri Lankan into the artwork. And I have this a set of group of people that I used to travel with, and there's a photographer, a friend of mine, who goes on all these travels with me, and he has a DSLR obviously, and he takes really nice pictures. So I asked him if he wants to help me with a bit of pictures so that I can maybe include them in the artwork. And then he sent me a bunch of pictures, and this one stood out obviously because of the mist and the mountain perfectly being captured. So I sent Johnny like a couple of I think it was around 5 to 6 pictures or so I sent him, and then he told me that this would be the most appropriate picture to use, and it makes complete sense as well, based on the first track of the single, which is Ashrama. So then of course he started doing his thing, and he added the 1 and 0 of
it just fits
Goldfat into the artwork.
It fits so perfectly in the artwork. You really see it like coming out of the clouds, and it's just a beautiful one. But so tell me about the tracks. I know you've talked a bit about it already in different interviews and stuff, but tell me a bit about those 2 tracks and the story behind them.
So the first track is Ashrama. So basically my inspiration behind Ashrama was there's a monastery in the Knuckles mountain range. So that's a mountain range we have in Sri Lanka. There's a monastery in the mountain range called the Hillside Hermitage. So it's a group of monks living in a location, pursuing meditation and well-being. It's very exclusive as well. No one else knows where it is, and no one is allowed to visit either. So so that they're on Instagram, by the way. So
Okay.
that's how I got to know about the existence. And obviously, the monks write a lot of books, and then they publish it online, and we get to read them as well. And there's a dog sanctuary inside the hermitage as well. They take care of a lot of dogs, stray dogs, and most of the funds that they raise are being diverted to looking after these animals, putting medicine and taking care of them. So I felt as if it would be nice to capture that feeling to a song, obviously. So I had to I had to incorporate most of the Buddhist chants and South Asian kind of very watery elements into the track as well. A lot of jungle sounds, jungle in the sense the actual jungle, not the genre, the nature. So I started organizing the song, and later on I felt as if certain areas of the song would require certain elements. So then I looked into them and added them, and then finally I think I was happy with the product in terms of how I wanted to portray the feeling, because obviously I didn't want it to sound like a typical drum and bass song, but I always want my songs to have a backstory behind the song. So basically that's kind of how Ashrama came into being.
Yeah, and then the flip side.
Then Zainab, obviously. So I wanted to see if so in terms of Zainab, I didn't have a proper direction, so to speak, at first. But once I started progressing and once I started adding certain elements, specifically Indian elements, I felt as if I could maybe introduce a bit of Arabic vocals just to see what happens.
Yeah.
Because I feel as if Arabic music is not being perceived as much as I would love to in the drum and bass community, because I feel as if Arabic music is amazing. Because there's a lot of very weird pronunciations, and the melodies are very very different to what we hear usually. So I wanted to see if there's a possibility for me to merge some of the Arabic elements into a drum and bass song. So it was just a matter of me trying to understand how to merge the vocals properly into drum and bass scenario, because obviously Arabic vocals are a little bit harsh in terms of pronunciation. There's a lot of sounds going on. So I wanted to see how well I could incorporate the vocals into the track. And obviously I had feedback from Andre as well, and then later on with the Goldfat people with Might Kiss, and then he wanted me to strip some of the elements out and then to reintroduce some of the elements with filters on, so that it sounds so much smoother instead of being very aggressive and upfront. So in the end, I was able to put it together perfectly, and then obviously I had a background story to it as well, in terms of naming the song Zainab, which means desert flower. So I wanted to see I wanted to like portray people that even in harsher conditions like desert, flowers can still grow. Zainab is a name that is being widely used for girls in Arab, in Muslim communities, and even in Sri Lanka, Zainab is a pretty common name in the Muslim community. So I wanted to see how I can use a very household name like that into a drum bass song as well. And I have quite a bit of Muslim friends in Sri Lanka as well, so I love the music that they play. I don't know if you're familiar with a song called Habibi.
I think I've heard. Is that like a super famous song? I think I've heard it.
Yeah.
You can sing.
So I'm a huge fan of that song as well. So I was really compelled to try out Arabic elements in songs, and it worked out well for my advantage.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really interesting how you were saying earlier when you were learning music in school, and you kept referring to it as Western music. Which I thought was interesting, because for us it's just music. It's like we're learning music, But from your point of
Yeah.
view, it's like I was learning Western music, and we tend to forget here in the Western world there's also Eastern music. There's other
Eastern music, yeah.
there,
It's for us. It's basically Western and
yeah,
Eastern
yeah,
music,
yeah, and we
because we have sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. So the eight notes in the Western music, Eastern music as well. So it's basically two worlds for us.
yeah, yeah,
It's Western and Eastern.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just funny how we tend to be very centric on ourselves in our world, and it's like it's just music, and obviously from your point of view, it's Western music, and then there's Eastern music, and I think you really incorporated those elements well. And the first time you hear the track, Zainab especially, your ears directly like just you're listening to it and you're like, oh wow, like I haven't heard this before in drum and bass, and your attention is immediately captured by the track, which I think is always vital to try and do. Like you don't want to have a track that just plays in the background and you kind of don't notice it because it's just something you've already heard. So yeah, I think you really did that really well on those two tracks.
Thank you.
So yeah, man, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm gonna slowly wrap this one up.
Of course.
I loved reminiscing about Pendulum. Loved talking about heavy metal. You need to send me a few of those test track tracks because I've never listened to that band before. So send me
most definitely.
yeah. Send me a few of those tracks.
They have a huge back catalog as well. So
yeah, maybe let me know like where I should start because sometimes it's hard to know like where should I start when there's a huge back catalog. But maybe just to wrap it up, what are kind of your goals or aspirations now with Iyre? Because obviously there's a lot of momentum behind you at the moment. What are your goals? Where do you want to bring Iyre? Do you want to relocate to the UK and like make a full-on career? Like, what's your kind of plan?
Right now, in terms of music, I would say my next goal would be my EP with Goldfat. So I'm working on an EP right now for Goldfat. About 4 songs or 5 songs on the works for them. So in terms of music, my prime objective would be to finish the EP and then try to venture into other ventures as well. But I think in terms of the labels that I want to work with, I'm pretty much working with them right now. So I don't see myself moving around that much between labels, but I want to kind of stick with the labels that I work with because obviously the experiences have been so amazing with all these labels, and I feel as if there's a lot of investment in on their behalf for me as well. So it makes sense for me to work with these labels because obviously the experience has been amazing so far. And in terms of aspirations, I don't know honestly because most of these aspirations I had right now as a producer has been achieved so far.
UKF.
I mean, I had at least 2 years for me to get onto UK. I mean, obviously I had that in mind because I was releasing music. I got the chance to release music with Goldfat, and Goldfat prominently hits UK and Drum Arena and all these places. So I had a 2-year window, but then again, it started happening as soon as possible. So I'm still contemplating in terms of what I want to do next year. But definitely, I'm hoping to maybe start a Patreon and start my own community because I love teaching.
You love
and sharing my experiences
teaching,
with people as well. Yeah. So I want to see if there's the chance for me to work with the community and expose myself in terms of artistry and production and to help people and to build a community. So that's kind of an objective I have in mind right now. But in terms of ideas, I don't know where I would be next year, but I mean, obviously, me being from Sri Lanka, there's very less chance for me to maybe play a few gigs in Europe or UK because there's a huge cost involved in terms of traveling as well. So I don't see myself touring in UK right now, but I have certain things in the works that maybe I would love to maybe relocate to Canada or somewhere. I don't know. It's in the works still, but there's a possibility. But until that happens, I can't be sure about it. But I'm definitely pursuing that ideas as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I am right now in terms of Iyre. But in terms of the music elements, I think I'm evolving as and when as you speak as well. Because if you compare the stuff that I released right now and the stuff that I'm working on for next year, there's a drastic difference in terms of how they sound and
Okay.
The elements that have been incorporated. And I mean, I'm getting to meet all these people, these amazing producers like yourself, and I'm getting to share experience with a huge a number of producers and promoters and label owners and all of this. So I'm really enjoying myself, to be honest with you. I'm loving the experience so far, and it's more than what I imagined how the drum and bass community would be like. And I just want to see how best I can release music at this moment, and I think that's my prime motive to release something that resonates on a personal as well as a public level, in terms of the production quality and the elements that I use. I don't want it to sound like a typical drum and bass record, but I want to see how unique that I can make, obviously while living inside the drum and bass scope, but I want to see how unique that it can sound in the drum and bass community. So that is kind of like my objective so far for next year.
And dude, honestly, as you said, you've ticked a lot of boxes already in terms of like UKF upload and those kind of things. So yeah, I think it's important also to like just take your time and not try to rush stuff, and just, as you said, make the best music you can, and it'll come out whenever, and things will happen whenever they need to happen.
Yeah. Because obviously, I think the first year was kind of like an experiment for me as well. Because I've had around 11 releases so far, and all of them came out right after the other as well. So I now kind of understand how I should face myself in terms of as a release schedule, and you don't necessarily have to release everything that you make. So maybe you can hold on to a few tunes and use them as dubs. I don't know. So you just have to take your time and do it on your own pace, because it's not a race, obviously. And liquid drum and bass genre is not ever changing like the neuro scene. So the music that you make can resonate even after 10 years, which is why we still listen to all these previous artists like Marcus Intellects and all these back catalogs of metalheads and all these old prolific producers. So I feel as if liquid music will still resonate into this much of years in the future, because obviously the genre is focused on musicality as the prominency, as opposed to a subgenre like neuro, because everything is ever changing in neuro. So you have to be the current sounding sound.
It's a lot more technically focused. So as the technology and techniques evolve, then it might sound a bit out of date. Whereas if you put a break on top of a piano, that's never going to sound old.
Exactly. So I feel as if that pressure in terms of sounding relevant is not non-existent in the liquid world. So I'm not very much worried in terms of not being able to stick to like a release pattern or anything, but I'm focused on getting the music right in the first place for next year. So which is what I'm currently doing. There's a lot of collaboration in the works as well. So I want to see how I can work with other artists as well. I think there's a collab with Alpha. I think I released a song with Alium as well, Connor. So there's a few songs that I'm working with Pixies, Astreox, Historia. I think me and Historia are working on an EP. So we have around 3 songs on the works as at right now. So I just want to see how I can work with all these different producers and make a very unique products as well, because because the outcome of a collaboration is really, really unique, as I feel, because obviously you and me being different producers, we have different perspectives in terms of how we approach to songs and the elements that we use in the songs as well. So I feel as if collaborations really pave the future in terms of how progressive our community can be, because obviously we need to help each other and we need to feed off each other, because we're all in this together. It's not a race, it's not a competition. We basically have to help each other and raise each other up and help each other to get into places, because it's going to snowball into everyone else as well. So I'm really happy to be a part of this community, and I'm really thankful for everybody who's been supporting my small project. So I want to be thankful for Iyre, first of all. Obviously, he's been a huge part of our drum bass production, and obviously to Grant, Johnny Might-Kiss, obviously, and then to Marco. He has been amazing as well. He's been really supportive, and of course to Luke and Sampo from UK. So these guys have been really supporting me as well, and I have to thank everyone else that has been a part of my musical journey, and I love talking to them. I love sharing experiences with them, and I honestly enjoy myself, and I think I'm mentally in a much better place as well, because obviously I'm now connected. I'm getting to interact with the real drum and bass community. I get to see all these events that are happening around the world as a first-hand experience, and I'm getting to interact with producers from prolific labels. So it's been amazing, and I'm really thankful for everybody. And I'm really thankful for you as well for inviting me to Late Liquid, because I've been following the Liquid podcast for quite some time now. I've been loving the material that you've been putting out, and I've been a huge fan of the show as well. So I'm thankful for this opportunity for you, my friend, as well. So yeah, let's see how we can cash on next year.
Yeah. No, definitely. You seem to be in a great mental place at the moment, and I think it's a great inspiration for other people as well to see somebody who is from a country or a region where there's no drum and bass, and you can actually make it, and you can connect with people because we have the internet in most places in the world, and so there's always people you can connect with, even though where you live might not be the most active scene. So I think like your story in that sense is really inspiring. But big up to yourself, man. Thanks a lot for coming on, and all the best with your future projects. I'll be definitely keeping an eye out for that EP on Goldfat.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, man.
Thanks. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks.